Pull out your hose and grab your can. We're about to integrate another Pest Geek podcast. Hi, everybody. Frank Hernandez here, and welcome to the Pest Geek podcast, bringing you the latest information on pests, products, and politics from today's leading industry sources to help you start, manage, and grow your pest control business.
Thanks, Frank. Stephen Vantassel here, wildlife control consultant, bringing you another episode of Living the Wildlife. Wanted to talk today about being an expert witness. Yeah, expert witness. What is an expert witness? Well, an expert witness is an individual that is contracted typically by an attorney, to provide superior background knowledge and insight about a particular discipline that the lawyer thinks will help his or her client win or defend themselves in a particular legal proceeding. Wow, that sounds like a lot, and it is. But in shorthand, as an expert witness, you are bringing your expertise, your knowledge, your background to help a defendant or a plaintiff make their case. Let me give an illustration. It might be the easiest way to go. Let's say you're a homeowner and you hire XYZ Wildlife Control to come to your property to control what you believe to be a raccoon or something in the attic. You don't know. XYZ Wildlife Control Company comes out and says to you, there's nothing, you don't have anything in your property, but you do have a hole in your vent up there, and we're going to close that off for you and charge you $200. You say, great, I don't want anything getting in there. So you hire the company and they go up there and they close it off for $200. You pay them, you're on your way. Well, later that night, all of a sudden you hear sounds like a holy war occurring in your attic, and the place is banging out. So you go outside in your pajamas and you're looking up and you shine a light at the vent, and what do you see? It's a raccoon sticking her head out the vent that just got trashed, that you paid $200 for. And not only that, there's damage to the siding of the house now. And so now it's even worse than before. You don't have a damaged vent. You also have damaged siding. So you call the client, you call the company, XYZ Wildlife Control Company up, and you say, hey, I had a raccoon in the house, and the guy blows you off, and now you're mad. And let me do a little side note here. The fact is, folks, many lawsuits occur because the contractor failed to resolve the problem, because sometimes the contractor's a jerk. And I'm not claiming that's always the case. There are customers who simply set up contractors as a way to sue them and extort money. That certainly happens, and I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm just saying that many times, I might even argue the majority, although I don't have the stats on it, but I would probably suggest that many times lawsuits occur because the contractor failed to resolve the mistake that the contractor made. Most people don't want to go through the trouble of having a lawsuit. It's a pain in the butt, but they do it because they've suffered significant losses, or they're extremely angry at the way they were treated. Treat your customers fairly, and the likelihood that you ever have to deal with a lawsuit pretty small. I've had situations in my career where I've made mistakes. You fix the problem, folks. You want to avoid court. You fix the problem. Anyways, so now the customer felt shunned by the contractor and calls their lawyer and starts a lawsuit. The lawyer is now going to look for someone who's an expert witness to say, and this is what the lawyer is going to want that expert witness to say, that company XYZ failed to follow standard industry protocol on inspecting that house and resolving the customer's complaint, that the contractor didn't do due diligence. And that's what the expert witness would be asked to do in that particular scenario. And that's basically what the lawyer wants you to do, is to try to show that, hey, the contractor really didn't do what they were supposed to do. And so that's what an expert witness is all about. Now, understand that the defense in this case is probably going to want their own expert witness, because they're going to have their side of the story. Okay. So you can see in situations where things aren't so black and white, like I've just illustrated here, you're going to have maybe opposing expert witnesses. But sometimes, one side is truly guilty, and that's just the way it is. But I've given a very slanted story, as you can probably tell. So let's say you're interested in becoming an expert witness. How do you become an expert witness? Well, it's really a two-phase, two-piece process. The first piece, of course, is you need to be an expert. You need to be someone who's in the top 10% of your field. You need to be someone who is considered a go-to person for wildlife control. Now, there's going to be a lot of those. For instance, you could be the top 10% in raccoon trapping. You could be the top 10% in bat control. You could be the top 10% in beaver control, whatever the case may be. But you want to strive for excellence in that you are a thought leader within your particular discipline. Now, does that require a degree? Not necessarily. It depends. I mean, obviously, if you're interested in if the lawsuit's going to be on bat control, do we really need someone who's a PhD? Is a PhD even relevant? Would I rather, if I was an attorney, and I'm not, but if I was an attorney, would I rather have someone who had a PhD, or would I rather have someone who had 20 years of bat control experience? It would depend on the situation. If the situation was, did this contractor handle the bat control properly, then I'd probably want the person with 20 years of experience. But if the situation was diseases spread by bats, then I'd probably want someone who was a PhD or had some sort of medical degree to explain how zoonotic diseases are transmitted from bats to humans. So you can see that there are a lot of different ways to slice the expert witness pie. So that's the first part, being an expert, whatever that would take. So publications, speaking, training, getting training yourself, constantly learning, being a person who has prestige and expertise in the industry, in the particular field that you're in. Part 2, the second aspect, is simply chance. You have to have a situation where there's a lawsuit or some sort of conflict between people that need to be mediated, and the attorney has to find you. So there's some variables there. And again, wildlife control related lawsuits are pretty rare still in the United States. However, as the industry continues to mature and penetrate society, I suspect the demand for expert witnesses in the wildlife control field will continue to grow. But again, there aren't going to be as many as necessary, let's say, for insects, because there are fewer wildlife animal issues as opposed to insect issues. But nevertheless, there will be a growth area, in my opinion, in the coming years. So you have to get found. There has to be a lawsuit, number one, and those are growing. But then there also has to be, the lawyer has to find you, assuming that your expertise is relevant for that particular case. So how do you get found? Well, there are websites out there that actually act as a clearinghouse for expert witnesses, and you can do a Google search on your own, find various expert witness clearinghouses, and then get your name registered. And they'll ask you for things like a resume and your expertise and your academic background. Have you done this before? What your fee rate is, where you're located, and all that kind of stuff. That is something you can do all on your own. So if you're interested in becoming an expert witness, be an expert, continue to strive. It may take years, and then get your name out there, volunteer for things, become members of associations, get into leadership positions, get a blog, get a website, get posted on these various expert witness sites, publish, and then you have to simply wait until that particular lawsuit comes and calls, and someone calls you. So what happens if someone does call you? I've had the opportunity to be an expert witness on a particular case, so I don't have a lot of experience in this, but I have one, and it's certainly, I wish someone would have taught me what was involved in being an expert witness before I started, because I think it would have helped me understand the process a little bit more. So let me explain to you about what happened for me. And I've been contacted by other people to be an expert witness, but those situations didn't pan out into actually going to the court case. So the first thing that's going to happen is the attorney or the attorney's assistant is going to call you or email you and inquire about your interest level in a particular case. And they're going to want to know from you your level of expertise and your availability. You're going to answer their questions, and they're going to tell you a little bit about the court case or the mediation case that they're dealing with, because they want to find out, A, do you have expertise relevant to this particular case? And then B, do you have a bias that is going to be in favor or opposed to the position of their client? Let me give an illustration. Let's say you're someone who hates footholds, and you think footholds are the most evil trap in the world. Well, chances are, if the situation that you're being called about is the wildlife control operator using footholds and is then being sued over that, chances are you, as someone who hates footholds, is not going to be invited by that attorney to be an expert witness because your bias is so much against their client. Now, you might be called by the plaintiff, the person bringing the lawsuit, because you hate footholds so much. You would probably make an excellent expert witness because of your hatred for footholds that were used by that particular wildlife control operator. So even if you are an expert, if your position or if your attitude is of a particular mindset, the lawyer has to determine, are you going to be a benefit for their client or someone who's going to be a detriment to their client? So if someone tried to call me up and tried to get me to defend animal rights positions, they have called the wrong person. That's just the way it is. So the same thing can happen to you, but you need to be aware of that going in, because you're going to be hired by this attorney to help their client, and that's an obligation that you have. Now, you have an obligation to tell the truth, but you don't want to sandbag the client when you get in there. So I would also give you some other advice. Make sure your fee schedule is high enough to make it worth your while. You're going to get your expenses paid. That's sort of a given. But you need to get a price schedule that's high enough to make it worth your while. You may have a lot of reading to do because the lawyer may send you materials that you're going to have to digest. Make sure you have the arrangement with the attorney that they're obligated to give you everything. And you may have to read some material before you commit to this situation. So there may be an investment on your part of time and energy without getting any compensation whatsoever, but you need to negotiate that with the attorney. Then you have to understand that if you decide to have a contract and you're going to be the expert witness for this particular client, that the court case, they'll give you a little bit of notification, but sometimes you may only get a couple of days notice. So, and you're going to have to go if you have to go. So there could be a deposition, and then you may have to go to a court date or a hearing date, and that may occur with only a couple of days notice. So it can really jam up your schedule if it occurs at a wrong time. So let's say the court case occurred during the time like in late August, where you're starting to do all the bats now because your blackout period's now expired and you're able to do some bat work. You may find that you've got to spend a couple of days in the courtroom and you wish you were on the ladder of finishing off the jobs that have been hanging up over for a couple of months. Your clients are dying to get finished off. So understand that you need to be thinking about how you're going to be compensated for that. So if being an expert witness is something that you're interested in doing, make sure you become an expert witness. You make sure that you learn your field inside and out, and then try to be that thought leader within your discipline, and then get the word out to the public that you're available to do this. This is where volunteering and publications, and I'm trying to do a little push here because I'm part of the National Wildlife Control Operators Association. We need more volunteers who are willing to commit and put their shoulder thing, because you can't be called if you're not known. So it's something to keep in the back of your mind. Understand the negative side of being an expert witness. It can be stressful. Not just that you have to travel to locations outside of your area, or your time is being disrupted. It is stressful to be in a courtroom. They don't call it a trial for nothing. And you will be cross-examined, and it's not necessarily mean. I mean, the lawyers are usually professional enough. It's not personal. But it's still stressful because you're under oath and there's serious things involved here. But you could have an important role to play. And there's going to be high emotion because someone's going to win and someone's going to lose. And that's always going to be a challenge. So, but if it's something you're interested in, it's something where you can make some money, particularly if you're in the later part of your career, it may be something that you want to try to explore for yourself. Hope that was helpful for you, if nothing else, because you may find yourself in a lawsuit where an expert witness is being used against you, if nothing else, and you at least know what that process is. Hey, I'm Stephen Vantassel for Wildlife Control Consultant. Thanks for listening. Again, love to hear from you. Email address is wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for listening. Back to you, Frank.
Thank you for listening to the Pest Geek Podcast. If you have enjoyed the Pest Geek Podcast, please give us a rating, write a review, or subscribe to the channel. You can join the Pest Geek Society by visiting pestgeekpodcast.com. Thank you for listening. See you next time.